Boeing's newest jet had a fatal flaw its own engineers didn't design, couldn't see, and weren't allowed to fix. This isn't a story about one broken part. It's about how a system can be perfectly designed to miss the point. Forget the stock price, follow the blueprint. Let's find the failure in the incentives. Chapter 1: The Incentive Takeover. If you want to understand any collapse, start with the scoreboard. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets rewarded gets done. For decades, Boeing's scoreboard was engineering excellence. The reward was building the most advanced, reliable aircraft in the world. The company was run by people who understood the product because they had helped design it. Then the scoreboard changed. After its merger with McDonnell Douglas in 1997, a different logic took hold. The primary metric was no longer engineering marvels, but shareholder returns. The people running the company were no longer evaluated on the integrity of a wing spar, but on the movement of a stock price. This is an incentive audit in its purest form. Who benefits if this works? Shareholders and executives through stock buybacks and bonuses tied to financial targets. Who absorbs the loss if it fails? Passengers, employees, and eventually the company's century-old reputation. The system's output became predictable. When your bonus depends on cutting costs by 10% and delivering the quarterly earnings target, you will cut costs and hit the target. You will optimize for the numbers on the spreadsheet. The plane itself becomes a secondary consideration, a vehicle, literally, for delivering those financial results. The stated goal of safety and quality remained, but the payoff structure was now aligned with something else entirely. This misalignment is where every systemic failure begins, but cutting costs is just an order. The real shock is in how a legendary engineering firm decided to do it. The method reveals a company that began to see its own core competency as a problem to be managed, not an asset to be preserved. Chapter 2: The Disassembly of Expertise. Faced with the mandate to do more for less, Boeing made a series of operational choices that look rational in a spreadsheet, but are catastrophic in a machine shop. They didn't just trim fat, they surgically removed their own central nervous system. First, they physically disconnected leadership from production. Moving the corporate headquarters from Seattle to Chicago in 2001 wasn't just a real estate decision. It was a symbolic and practical severing of the link between the people making the decisions and the people executing them. A manager in Chicago sees a production delay as a red line on a chart. An engineer on the factory floor in Seattle sees a misdrilled hole, a stressed worker, and a substandard part. The ivory tower effect isn't about arrogance, it's about the fundamental loss of feedback. When you cannot walk down to the floor and see, hear, and smell the problems, you start to believe your own abstract plans. Second, and far more critically, they outsourced not just parts, but knowledge. Boeing transitioned from a manufacturer to an integrator. Instead of building major components, they would design them and then contract the fabrication to the lowest global bidder. On paper, this saves capital and shifts risk. In reality, when you outsource the making, you outsource the knowing. A supplier meeting a cost target doesn't have the same incentive as Boeing to understand how that part interacts with 10,000 others in a flying machine. Boeing's own engineers lost the tactile, hands-on understanding of their designs. They became managers of specifications, not masters of a craft. This led to the third and most irreversible loss: institutional memory. The experienced engineers and machinists, the people who carried the tacit knowledge of why a certain bolt was torqued a specific way, or what a worrisome sound in a hydraulic line meant, were incentivized to leave. Early retirement packages, a culture now prioritizing cost accountants over master mechanics, and a devaluation of deep experience led to a brain drain. You can outsource a part, but you cannot outsource 50 years of intuition. Once that generation walked out the door, that knowledge wasn't just archived, it was deleted. So you have a leadership disconnected from reality, a workforce stripped of its core knowledge, and a supply chain optimized for cost, not cohesion. This creates a system perfectly primed for a specific dangerous type of failure, one where problems aren't just made, but actively hidden. Chapter 3: The Silence Factory. In a high-stakes, complex system like aerospace, safety isn't just a feature you build in. It's a process you maintain. It relies on a constant, unimpeded feedback loop. Someone sees a problem, reports it, the system analyzes it, and fixes it. Break that loop, and the system is flying blind. Boeing's new incentive structure systematically broke that loop. It created what insiders described as a culture of fear. When the supreme measurable priority is meeting production deadlines and cost targets, any obstacle to that goal becomes the enemy. A quality inspector finding a flaw is no longer a hero preventing disaster. They are a villain causing a delay. An engineer raising a concern isn't diligent, they are difficult. Employees quickly learn the real rules. Raising a flag might mean a reprimand, a sidelining, or the end of your career. Keeping your head down and hitting the schedule means rewards and peace. This is the system working exactly as designed. It is incentivizing silence. When the cost of speaking up is personal ruin, and the benefit is abstract and unthanked, the rational choice for the individual is to stay quiet. The result is that fatal flaws don't get flagged and fixed on the factory floor, they get papered over, signed off on, and shipped out. The feedback loop isn't just slow, it's severed. Leadership in Chicago receives reports saying everything is on track because the people on the ground have been taught that reporting anything else is career suicide. The system delivers exactly the information it was designed to deliver. Confirmation that the financial plan is being met. This is how you get to a point where a company can deliver a brand new multi-million-dollar jet, and neither the executives who approved it nor the engineers who stamped the plans truly know what's wrong with it. The knowledge was outsourced, the experienced eyes were pushed out, and the remaining voices were silenced. The machine kept producing planes, but it had long ago stopped producing understanding. But if the system is so broken, why didn't it collapse sooner? And what happens when a company in this state tries to fix itself? Chapter 4: The Unresolved Exposure. This is the central unresolved exposure. Boeing's crisis is not a mechanical problem solvable by a redesigned door plug or a new software patch. It is a cultural and systemic failure. You cannot issue a memo telling people to care more about quality when every other metric and reward in their professional lives tells them to care about speed and cost. Fixing it requires a fundamental rewiring of the entire company, a reversal of the last 30 years. It means realigning incentives, tying executive compensation overwhelmingly to long-term safety and quality metrics, not quarterly stock performance. Making the scoreboard reflect the real product again, reintegrating knowledge, bringing critical manufacturing back in-house, not because it's cheaper in the short term, it won't be, but because it rebuilds the connective tissue between design and production. It means valuing and retaining experienced workers, not as costs, but as the irreplaceable core of the business. Reopening the feedback loop, actively rewarding, not punishing, problem identification. This requires dismantling the culture of fear, which is perhaps the hardest task of all, as it means convincing thousands of people that the rules have truly changed. The brutal math check here is time and money. This rewiring process would be astronomically expensive and would depress financial results for years. It is a direct assault on the very shareholder value model the company adopted. The market would punish the stock mercilessly in the short term. So the question is, does the current leadership, or any leadership accountable to modern capital markets, have the mandate to execute such a painful, long-term transformation? Boeing's story is the ultimate case study in how a complex system can optimize itself for a false target. It forgot that its purpose was to build safe airplanes, not maximize shareholder value. Those two things can align, but only if the former is the unwavering priority. When you flip them, you don't just get worse planes, you get a company that loses the ability to understand what a good plane even is. The forward pull question isn't just about Boeing. It's about every complex safety-critical industry in our financialized world. Where else has the scoreboard changed, disconnecting reward from real-world results, and how long until we hear the feedback from those silent factories? If you want to follow more systems as they face these irreversible pressures, follow and subscribe.